So I'm Paul Ramsden. I come from England, live in Nottingham with my wife Mary and my daughter Katie. Gavesding was, for me, it was a brilliant climb. It was a real adventure in the fact that we didn't even know what the mountain looked like when we set off from England. So it was a total adventure alpinism. We had an unclimbed summit, and we climbed it by a new route on the north face. So it was to have an unclimbed summit and climb it by possibly its hardest route, up a face we'd never seen before, and then descend down a different route was, for me, it was almost like the perfect alpine experience. No, we had no photos of the face or the route, and we had no information. All we had was an image, a satellite image from Google Earth. That was it. I like maximum adventure. This year was unusual. I mean, usually we have some indication of the mountain. So usually we'll have a reasonable photograph, or maybe just a profile of the mountain. Some years we have amazing detail. You know, when we went to Shiva, we had photographs from every direction, and we had loads of information. But having no information is exciting. You know, this year we got to base camp and we still couldn't see the mountain, and the mules went back and left us in the base camp, and we'd still not seen the climb. So we were totally committed for a month to a climb we'd not seen, and that's really cool. 1,600 meters. Technically, it was hard. Not as hard as something like Shiva that we did a few years ago, but much more committing, much longer, much more complex route finding. There were easier routes to the side, but they had objective hazards like seracs. So it was always a compromise between easier routes that were more dangerous and then blank rock that was too difficult. So to find something that was safe but we could possibly climb required quite complex route finding. We acclimatised on a mountain opposite, and we basically spent 2 or 3 days with binoculars studying the route. And the way you do it is you study the face and you identify possible routes and possible bivouac locations, and you kind of have a proposed line. It's like having a topo before you climb it. And now, because we're quite experienced, often your planned topo actually turns out to be fairly accurate. So we had a route A, and then we had a few options that we kind of thought maybe alternatives, but in reality they were all impossible. So there was only one route option. Almost exactly every day was as we planned. So we identified the bivouac locations beforehand, and the route we climbed. Yeah, it was we almost were following a route description that we wrote ourselves beforehand. The most physically demanding route that I've done would have been Saguniang, that we climbed in 2002. It was technically hard, but physically very, very hard. It was very steep. The weather was very bad. We had very poor bivouacs, very hard to cook. So we struggled to melt water, to eat food. I think I lost 12 kilos in 10 days. So that's the route we got our first Piolet de Oro for. We'd been on an expedition the year before. We went to Cantega in 2001. But it was that we didn't climb anything. We got to base camp and we looked at the mountain and decided it was too dangerous. So we came home. He's a friend, good friend. We just we get on very well. You know, we're very similar in that you know, we both have jobs and careers, families, houses, mortgages. We have all the same kind of home problems and issues, and that makes it easier on the mountain. So sometimes, for example, if you're a person like me with a family and a job, if you climb with people who are professional climbers, your lives are so different, it can be quite hard to understand each other. But with Mick, we're just very similar. And then on the mountain, I think we have the same approach to mountaineering. We have the same acceptance of risk. You know, so we both like things to be as safe as we possibly can make it. And I think we all both have the same amount of perseverance, which is very important. You know, you can't have one person pushing the most on a climb. You know, you need to be a balanced team. So I think we're just very balanced. If I'm honest, Mick does most of the organisation. His job is a bit more flexible than mine in terms of working hours, and he has more contacts, so it's probably easier for him to organise quite a lot of it. You know, so some years I've had nothing to do with the organisation. I've just been given a date and a time to go to the airport. So that's quite entertaining. On the mountain, we don't have any satellite phones. We don't do blogging at base camp or any kind of information technology. I don't like that. I'm not even on Facebook. I don't like forecasting the mountain. If you get forecast, it influences your decisions. You know, rather than following your own judgment, rather than looking at the clouds and making your own decisions, somebody else is making the decision for you, the weather forecast. You've got to be prepared to climb in bad weather. We're quite fortunate. When you learn to climb in Scotland, it's part of the tradition of Scotland to climb in bad weather. I think a lot of alpine countries don't have bad weather climbing traditions, whereas in Scotland it's just normal to climb in bad weather. And then if it gets really bad, you just need to camp and wait till it improves. It's just normal for mountains. I've climbed Himalayas, South America, Antarctica, in the Arctic, in Alaska. I've climbed in most of the mountain ranges of the world, and nowhere has weather as bad as Scotland. It sounds like an exaggeration, but in Scotland it's never very cold. It may be like -1 or 2, but it's very wet and it's very windy, so you feel really cold. Very easy to get hypothermia. Very tough conditions. When we plan our expeditions, we have usually quite a short period, maybe 4 weeks. And when you remove approach to base camp and coming home and the acclimatisation required, basically we are left with maybe 10 or 12 days to climb a 8-day route. So on a 1 month expedition we usually only have 2-3 spare days. So we know what day we will set off, and it's rarely influenced by the weather. Because if we don't set off today or the following day, then we will run out of time. So it's a very tight schedule. My experiences help me to be a better father, but I understand that what I do might not be what everybody perceives to be ideal fatherhood. So if I'm honest, on the mountain I try to avoid thinking about my family. I mean, there's no way around. You can't deny that if you want to be a mountaineer, you have to be quite selfish. You know, there's no option. If you could try and justify everything you do, but you know underneath there's not really a genuine justification. So you are being quite selfish doing what you do, and I have to compensate for that by being as good a father as I can be when I'm at home. I try to climb between expeditions, but it can be really difficult. Sometimes work and family commitments, just all the time disappears. So, you know, some years I genuinely don't climb at all between expeditions. You know, people don't believe you. They think you're kind of making it up or lying that you don't climb. But it's genuinely true. Some years I do quite well. Some years I might get a few trips to Scotland. I love ice climbing, so if I'm lucky I might get a week in Norway, which is my favourite place to go ice climbing. But sometimes it just doesn't happen. I'm too busy. So my first expedition was in 1990 to a peak called Nilkanth, and it was a terrible expedition. I came back and I said, I'm never going to go on an expedition ever again. We didn't know what we were doing. We had no experience. We failed badly. We were stressed by avalanches and storms, and we didn't work out how to do it. And I came back and I said, I'm never going to do an expedition again. I didn't go on an expedition again for maybe 6-7 years, and then I was invited to go to Alaska, and we had a good time. We did maybe 3 Alaskan expeditions, and we were successful. And that's when I realised that expeditions could be good fun. And then I met Mick, and we started climbing together. Alaska's good. It's very convenient. It's very good climbing. You've got 24 hours daylight, so you can do single push climbs. Very different from the Himalayas, but it's the perfect place to learn expedition skills. We did a new route on the Father and Son's Face of Denali, and it was a sort of single push 50-hour route. And it was I enjoyed it, but climbing single push routes over 50 hours, I missed not bivouacking. I like to bivouac. When you climb routes really, really fast, I think you lose some of the mountain experience. It's so enjoyable sleeping in the mountains and bivouacking and seeing sunrise and sunset, and being on the mountain for a long period of time. You can totally experience the environment. Whereas single push climbing, I've done it. I enjoy it, but you lose something. You lose a large part of the mountain experience, I think. To me, on a Himalayan trip, if you can spend 10 days on a route, that's the perfect thing. Why would you want to do it in 2 days? It's very easy to make mistakes when you're tired, make poor decisions. Also, when you're tired, it's so easy to decide to go down. The thing about the Himalaya is people find so many excuses to go down. Yeah, we always take books. Makes a huge difference in a storm. If you're trapped in a storm and you can read a book, you don't notice the storm. But if you sit there listening to the wind and the tent shaking, it's very easy after the storm to retreat because you're tired and you're worried and stressed. I think our approach is it's not European alpinism. It's still alpinism, but it's not the European fast and light. We do climb as fast as we can, and we do go as light as we can, but we do compromise those things for safety and sustainability. And it's not normal, but then we get to the top more than most people. So I think you perhaps need a slightly different approach in the Himalaya. So within 2 days I was at 3,000 meters in the Himalaya from Saudi Arabia. I went from 50 degrees centigrade straight to Kathmandu, straight to Simikot. Himalayan routes are all similar in some aspects. It was probably the most adventurous trip I've been on, just from the lack of information beforehand. It was unusual in that it was a virgin summit. Nobody had climbed the mountain at all, which is not that common. It was one of the better routes I've done, but not much different from the others. Climbing is pleasurable, but it's very important to get to the top. And the method that myself and Mick have been climbing, it's been very successful. So there's probably lessons to learn there. I have an objective that's over 7,000 meters, and Mick's decided that that's a bit too high for him now, so he's going on another project in India. Tom Nakamura sent me a picture of the mountain, and it's going to be quite hard. It's going to be a good. If we climb it, it will be a good route. Yeah, it looks quite steep and straight to the summit. Shiva was brilliant. That was probably the best climbing I've done, as in the best technical climbing. It was just superb quality climbing. Very hard, but perfect rock, perfect ice, very, very steep, very safe, good belays. technically really outstanding, and perfect bivouacs. It was probably the steepest route I've done, and yet every night we had a perfect lying down bivouac ledge. The ideal route would be needs to be a safe climb, so avoiding seracs and avalanche slopes. So that means really you want to be climbing a buttress, a crest of a buttress, where you're going to have no rockfall and no ice falls, minimum avalanche risk. You want a line that goes ideally straight to the summit, you know, something that's aesthetically pleasing, that looks good, and ideally something with an alternative descent. To do a full tour of the mountain is much more rewarding. To climb a hard route and abseil back down the same route, I find unsatisfying. It's not a journey. Whereas if you climb a route and descend another route, it turns the climb into a journey. As I get older, I definitely feel more relaxed in the mountains. I don't feel stressed or worried. It just feels like a comfortable place to be.